I knew something was wrong the moment my sister Amber grabbed that crystal bottle from her designer perfume collection. My 7-year-old son Ethan was hand-flapping near the dining table, overwhelmed by the strong scents filling my parents' house. Before I could move, Amber aimed the nozzle at his face and sprayed directly into his eyes. Ethan's scream pierced the air as he clutched his burning face. My mother laughed and said, "If he's blind now, maybe he won't see he's a burden too." My father added, "Well, at least he smells better now." The laughter continued behind me as I scooped Ethan into my arms and ran toward the bathroom. His screams echoed through the hallway, and I could feel his small body trembling against mine. His eyes were squeezed shut, tears streaming down his red cheeks mixed with whatever toxic chemicals Amber had just assaulted him with. "It's okay, baby. Mama's here. Mama's got you," I whispered, even though I knew he couldn't process my words through his panic. Ethan is autistic and nonverbal, and moments like this sent him into complete sensory overload. I turned on the bathroom faucet, guiding the cool water over his face while supporting his head. He fought me at first, the sensation of water adding to his distress, but I held firm. I had to flush out whatever was burning his eyes. "Dolores, what are you doing? You're making such a scene." My mother's voice cut through Ethan's cries as she appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "Making a scene?" I turned to face her, water dripping from my hands. Amber just sprayed perfume directly into my son's eyes. "He's 7 years old, Mom. This is assault." "Oh, please." Amber's voice came from behind our mother. He was touching my things. I barely spritzed him. "You're being dramatic as usual." "Barely spritzed?" My voice rose. "He was nowhere near your precious bottles. And even if he was, what kind of person attacks a child?" My father appeared in the hallway, looking annoyed. "Lower your voice, Dolores. The neighbors don't need to hear your hysterics." "My hysterics?" I stared at him in disbelief. "Dad, look at him. His eyes are swollen and red. I'm taking him to the emergency room right now." "You're embarrassing this family," he said coldly. "If you'd control that boy better, teach him some manners." None of this would have happened. I felt something break inside me. These were my parents, the people who were supposed to protect their grandson, not mock him while he suffered. I grabbed Ethan's jacket from the hook by the door. "We're leaving. Don't call me. Don't text me. Stay away from us." My hands shook as I wrapped the jacket around Ethan's shoulders. "Good," Amber said, examining her manicured nails. "Maybe now we can finish Sunday dinner in peace." I carried Ethan to my car, buckling him into his special car seat while he continued to sob and rub at his eyes. Once we were on the road toward the hospital, I called my best friend Julia. "Jules, I need you," I said when she answered, my voice breaking. "What happened? Where are you?" I explained everything through tears while navigating traffic. Julia promised to meet me at the emergency room. The ER wait felt eternal, but finally a doctor named Dr. Stevens examined Ethan. She was gentle, patient, letting him calm down before shining a light into his eyes. After what felt like hours, she turned to me with a serious expression. "The good news is, there doesn't appear to be permanent damage. The corneas are irritated but intact. However, chemical exposure to the eyes, especially in a child this young, is very serious." "Can you tell me exactly what happened?" I explained the incident in detail. Dr. Stevens' expression grew more concerned as she listened. She made notes in her chart, specifically documenting that the exposure was intentional, not accidental. "I'm prescribing antibiotic eye drops to prevent infection and some artificial tears for comfort. If his vision seems blurry or the redness doesn't improve in 48 hours, bring him back immediately." She handed me the prescriptions, then paused. "Mrs. Hartford, I have to ask. Is Ethan safe at home?" "Yes," I said firmly. "This happened at my parents' house. We don't live with them." She nodded, but I could see her making more notes. Great. Now, I probably had a child safety concern flagged in my son's medical record. Julia met us in the parking lot, bringing Ethan his favorite stuffed elephant. He grabbed it immediately, pressing it against his face. We got the prescriptions filled at the 24-hour pharmacy and finally made it home around 9 that night. After getting Ethan settled in bed with his eye drops administered, I sat on my couch and called my mother. The phone rang 4 times before she answered. "I hope you're calling to apologize for your behavior," she said instead of hello. Apologize? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, Amber hurt Ethan. She deliberately sprayed perfume into his eyes. The ER doctor documented it as intentional chemical exposure. This is serious. Oh, Dolores, always so dramatic. Amber didn't mean anything by it. She was frustrated. You know how difficult Ethan can be. Difficult? My voice rose. He's a 7-year-old boy with autism. He was stimming, not causing problems. And even if he was touching her things, that doesn't justify attacking him. Attack is a very strong word, my mother said coldly. I think you need to calm down and think about this rationally. Maybe if you disciplined Ethan properly, taught him to behave in social situations, people wouldn't get frustrated with him. I felt like I'd been slapped. He has autism, Mom. He's doing incredibly well in his therapy. His teachers love him. Just because he doesn't fit your definition of normal doesn't mean there's something wrong with him. I'm not having this conversation again, she said. If you want to keep causing drama, that's your choice. But you should know that your behavior today was unacceptable. Your father and I have been helping you with Ethan, babysitting when you need to work, being supportive grandparents. But if you're going to keep attacking your sister and causing scenes, well, maybe we need to reconsider our involvement. The threat was clear. I needed their help sometimes. My job as an administrative assistant didn't pay much, and having them available to watch Ethan a few hours here and there made my life manageable. But not like this. Not at this cost. I won't bring Ethan around until you all apologize, and until there are consequences for what Amber did, I said firmly. Fine, don't come around. But Dolores, you should know something. Her voice turned icy. Amber already called Child Protective Services this afternoon. She filed a report saying you're neglecting Ethan, that you hurt his eyes yourself and tried to blame her. The report is already in the system. Good luck explaining that to the investigators. End quote. The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might be sick. CPS. They'd called CPS on me. They'd lied and said I hurt my own son. What had I done to deserve this? What had Ethan done? He was just a little boy who experienced the world differently, and my own family had turned him into a weapon to use against me. I looked toward his bedroom, where my beautiful boy slept peacefully, his elephant clutched in his arms. I'd protected him from so much already. I'd fought with doctors, with insurance companies, with school districts to get him the services he needed. I'd sacrificed and struggled as a single mother to give him the best life possible. And now I had to protect him from my own family. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what would happen when CPS showed up at my door. The caseworker arrived 2 days later, just as I was getting Ethan ready for school. Her knock was professional but firm. I opened the door to find a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a tired expression holding a clipboard. Dolores Hartford? I'm Patricia Simmons from Child Protective Services. May I come in? My stomach dropped, but I stepped aside. Of course. Patricia entered my small 2-bedroom apartment, her eyes scanning the space with practiced efficiency. I knew what she saw. Modest furniture, clean but worn. Ethan's therapy charts and visual schedules on the refrigerator. Toys organized in bins. Nothing fancy, but a home filled with love and routine. I'm sure you know why I'm here, she said, settling onto my couch and opening her file. We received a report alleging neglect and abuse. The report states you injured your son and then filed a false complaint blaming a family member. That's not what happened. I sat across from her, forcing myself to stay calm. My sister deliberately sprayed perfume into my son's eyes. I have the emergency room paperwork. The doctor documented the chemical exposure as intentional. I handed her the ER discharge papers. Patricia read them carefully, her expression neutral. The person who filed the report claims you have anger management issues, that you're overwhelmed by your son's special needs, and that you hurt him in a moment of frustration. She looked up at me. She also states you're financially unstable, and that this apartment is inadequate for a special needs child. That's absolutely false. I stood up, grabbing Ethan's therapy binder from the kitchen counter. These are his therapy records. Speech therapy twice a week, occupational therapy once a week. He's making excellent progress. His teachers can verify that. My therapist, Dr. Rao, can speak to my mental health. I'm doing everything right for my son. Patricia took the binder, flipping through pages of data and progress notes. I can see you're very organized and committed to his care. That's good, but I need to complete a full investigation. I'll need to inspect the apartment, interview Ethan to the extent possible, and speak with your references. The next hour was grueling. Patricia examined every room, asked questions about my work schedule, my support system, my finances. She tried to interact with Ethan, who was getting increasingly agitated by the disruption to his morning routine. He wouldn't make eye contact with her, but he stayed calm in my presence, which I hoped spoke volumes. I can see he's comfortable with you, Patricia noted. No signs of fear or distress in your presence. That's positive. She took down the contact information for Julia, Dr. Rao, and Mrs. Harrison, Ethan's special education teacher. Before she left, she turned to me with a sympathetic expression. Miss Hartford, I've seen a lot of cases. From what I'm observing here, I don't see evidence of the concerns raised in the report. However, the investigation will take 30 to 45 days to complete. I have to be thorough. Until then, no finding has been made either way. After she left, I got Ethan to school late and barely made it to my own job at Sterling Insurance Company. My boss, Craig, was understanding about me being late, but I could see the concern in his eyes. 3 days later, everything fell apart at work. Craig called me into his office at 2 in the afternoon. The moment I saw his uncomfortable expression, I knew something was wrong. Dolores, please sit down. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. What's going on, Craig? He cleared his throat, not meeting my eyes. I received a phone call yesterday. An anonymous caller who claimed to be concerned about your situation. They said you're under investigation by Child Protective Services for child abuse. My blood ran cold. That investigation is baseless. My sister made a false report after she hurt my son. The caseworker has already been to my home and found no concerns. I understand this is complicated, Craig said, still not looking at me, but HR is worried about liability. The caller also suggested you might be unstable, that having you in the workplace could be a risk. A risk? Craig, I've worked here for 5 years. I've never had a single incident. This is a malicious lie from someone trying to hurt me. I believe you, he said, and I thought I heard genuine sympathy in his voice. But HR has made the decision to place you on administrative leave until the CPS investigation is resolved. Administrative leave? What does that mean? It means you won't be coming to work, and unfortunately, it's unpaid leave. Once the investigation clears you, we can discuss your return. I stood up, my legs shaking. Craig, I need this job. I have bills, rent, my son's therapy costs. I can't afford unpaid leave. I'm sorry, Dolores. This is out of my hands. HR has the final say on personnel matters. He finally met my eyes. I really am sorry. I walked out of that office in a daze. I cleaned out my desk, while my coworkers whispered and stared. By 3 that afternoon, I was sitting in my car in the parking lot, unemployed and terrified. I had about $3,000 in savings. My rent was $1,200 a month, car payment, utilities, groceries, Ethan's therapy copays. The math was simple and devastating. I had maybe 2 months before I'd be completely broke. I filed for unemployment that evening, but the website said it could take 3 to 6 weeks to process. I started applying for new jobs immediately, but how could I explain the sudden gap in employment? And what employer would hire someone under CPS investigation? For the next week, I sent out dozens of applications. Retail stores, restaurants, other office jobs, anything. I heard nothing back. Then Amber started texting me. The messages were superficially concerned but dripped with poison. Just checking in. Heard you lost your job. That's so hard. If you need help, you know you can ask family. We're here for you. Another message. Mom and Dad are worried about you. They think Ethan might be better off staying with them for a while. Just until you get back on your feet. They have the resources to care for him properly. I blocked her number after that one, but the damage was done. They were circling, waiting for me to fall apart so they could swoop in and take my son. 2 weeks after losing my job, a certified letter arrived. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was from a law firm, Peterson and Associates. My parents had filed for emergency temporary custody of Ethan. The document claimed I was an unfit mother, that Ethan was in danger, that they were his only hope for a stable life. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks away. They had hired a lawyer. I didn't even have enough money to get through next month, let alone pay for legal representation. I sank to the floor of my kitchen, the papers scattered around me, and finally let myself cry. How was I supposed to fight this? How was I supposed to win when they had money and resources and I had nothing? But when I looked up and saw Ethan's drawing on the refrigerator, a crayon picture of the two of us holding hands, I knew I couldn't give up. I called legal aid. They were backlogged for weeks. I called every low-cost legal service in the city. Nobody could take my case on such short notice. Finally, through a nonprofit organization that helps families with special needs children, I was connected with an attorney named Scott Brennan. He agreed to meet me the next day. Scott was in his early 40s, with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through the legal jargon to the human story underneath. I sat in his small office and told him everything while he took notes. "This is outrageous," he said when I finished. "Your sister assaults your child, they make false reports, they get you fired, and now they're trying to take custody? This is a pattern of harassment. Can you help me?" I asked. "I can't afford much. I can maybe pay a few $100s. Scott closed his notebook and looked at me directly. "I'm taking your case pro bono. This kind of thing makes me sick. Nobody should be able to use the legal system as a weapon like this." I nearly sobbed with relief. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet," he said. "We have a lot of work to do." Even though their case is weak, judges are cautious when it comes to children with special needs. They're going to paint a picture of you as a struggling single mother who can't provide stability. We need to counter that with evidence of your excellent parenting and their harmful behavior. Over the next 2 weeks, Scott and I built my defense. We gathered statements from Julia, Dr. Rao, and Mrs. Harrison. We compiled Ethan's therapy records, showing consistent progress. We prepared for every possible attack. But the day of the hearing, walking into that courtroom and seeing my parents sitting across the aisle with their expensive lawyer, a woman named Eleanor Price in a tailored suit, I felt like David facing Goliath. Judge Marianne Foster presided, a stern woman in her 60s, who listened intently as both sides presented their cases. Eleanor Price went first, and she was good. She painted me as an overwhelmed, unstable single mother who couldn't provide for my son's needs. She emphasized that I was unemployed, possibly facing eviction, under CPS investigation. She conveniently left out that my family had caused all of those problems. Then Amber took the stand and I watched her lie under oath. She claimed she'd been worried about Ethan for months, that she'd seen signs of neglect, that the Perfume incident was me losing control and blaming her. She cried actual tears. My own sister, destroying me with false testimony. My parents testified next, playing the concerned grandparents perfectly. They talked about wanting to help, about having resources and stability, about only wanting what was best for Ethan. When Scott cross-examined them, he got them to admit they'd never expressed these concerns before. He got Amber to stumble over details of her story, but I could see the judge was still concerned about my circumstances. Scott called his witnesses. Julia testified about what a devoted mother I was. Dr. Rao spoke about my mental health and coping skills. Mrs. Harrison described Ethan's progress and my involvement in his education. Then Patricia, the CPS caseworker, took the stand. She stated clearly that her investigation had found no evidence of abuse or neglect, that my home was appropriate, that Ethan was thriving in my care. In fact, Patricia said, the only stress I observed in the child seemed to stem from the family conflict and this custody battle itself. I saw hope in Scott's eyes, but Judge Foster still looked troubled. After both sides rested, the judge took a 15-minute recess. When she returned, my heart was in my throat. I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony, Judge Foster began. I want to be clear that I am not granting custody to the grandparents at this time. However, I am concerned about the child's stability given the mother's current employment and housing situation. She ordered mandatory supervised visitation for my parents twice weekly. She ordered me to find employment within 30 days. She scheduled another hearing in 45 days to reassess the situation. It wasn't the worst outcome. I still had Ethan, but I had to let my toxic parents near him again, and the threat of losing custody still hung over my head. As we left the courtroom, Amber appeared beside me in the hallway. She leaned close and whispered, "You have no idea what's coming. I've already contacted your landlord. Have fun with that." She walked away, leaving me frozen. 2 days later, an eviction notice appeared on my door. My landlord, Mr. Peterson, claimed I'd violated my lease by running an illegal daycare and had received too many noise complaints about Ethan's meltdowns. Both claims were completely false. But the eviction hearing was scheduled in 3 weeks. I called Scott in a panic. He added it to his growing list of legal battles he was fighting on my behalf. That night, I sat on my couch and wondered how much more I could take. Everything was falling apart. My job, my home, my family, my sense of safety. But when Ethan climbed onto my lap and rested his head against my shoulder, I knew I had to keep fighting, no matter what came next. The eviction battle consumed the next 3 weeks. Scott worked tirelessly, filing motions, gathering evidence that Mr. Peterson's claims were fabricated. But even if we won, the damage was done. My landlord hated me now. Living there would be impossible. Meanwhile, the supervised visitations began. Twice a week, I had to bring Ethan to a visitation center where my parents could see him under the watch of a social worker named Karen. The visits were torture. My parents brought expensive toys, tablets, games. They were overly sweet with Ethan, trying to win him over while shooting cold glances at me. Amber showed up to the 3rd visit, smirking at me from across the room until Karen asked her to leave. After one visit, my mother cornered me in the parking lot. "This wouldn't be happening if you'd just admit you can't handle him," she said quietly. "Let us help. We'll drop everything if you sign over custody voluntarily." I got in my car without responding. The job search was failing. I'd applied to 73 positions. I'd gotten 2 interviews, both of which went nowhere. Once they checked my references, or did a basic background search, Amber's poison was spreading everywhere. I started doing gig work, DoorDash, Instacart, anything to bring in money, but it barely covered groceries. My savings dwindled to $800. Then my father called. His tone was different, almost kind. "Dolores, your mother and I have been talking. We want to end this fighting. It's not good for anyone, especially Ethan." I was silent, waiting for the trap. "We'll drop the custody case," he continued. "We'll help you financially. Pay your rent for 6 months, help you find a stable job through our business connections. All you have to do is let Ethan stay with us temporarily while you get back on your feet. 6 months, maybe a year, you could visit any time. It would be voluntary, not through the courts." It sounded so reasonable. I was drowning, and he was offering a lifeline. I called Julia immediately after hanging up. "Don't do it," she said firmly. "It's a trap, Dolores. Once they have him, they'll never give him back. They'll claim you abandoned him." I called Scott next. He said the same thing. "They'll use the voluntary placement against you. They'll say you admitted you couldn't care for him. You'll never win him back." But I was about to be homeless. What choice did I have? I spent 2 days agonizing over the decision. Then Mrs. Harrison called. "Dolores, I need to tell you something." She sounded upset. "Your parents showed up at school today. They weren't supposed to be here, but they told Principal Andrews they were picking up Ethan for an appointment. My heart stopped. Did they take him? No, I wouldn't allow it. But they met with Principal Andrews. They told him you're losing custody and that they'll be taking over as guardians soon. They asked him to start transitioning Ethan, preparing him for the change. Fury burned through my fear. They have no right to do that. I know. I told Principal Andrews the truth about the situation. But Dolores, they're already acting like they have custody. If you give them Ethan voluntarily, they'll claim you abandoned him. That night, my father called for my answer. No, I said firmly, I'm not giving you my son. The line was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was ice. You'll regret this. The eviction hearing happened 3 days later. Despite Scott's best efforts, Mr. Peterson had documented his claims well. The judge ruled in his favor. I had 7 days to vacate. I had nowhere to go and $283 in my bank account. Julia offered her couch. She had 2 kids of her own in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment, but she insisted. I accepted because I had no other choice. Moving day was humiliating. I packed our essential belongings into my car and a small storage unit. Everything else I had to leave behind or donate. Ethan didn't understand what was happening. He kept trying to go back to his room, getting increasingly distressed. Living at Julia's was chaotic. Her kids were wonderful. But adding me and Ethan to the mix meant 5 people in a tiny space. Ethan struggled with the change in routine. His meltdowns increased. His sleep became irregular. Patricia, the CPS caseworker, did a follow-up visit. She documented that the investigation was closed with an unfounded finding. No abuse, no neglect. I should have felt relieved, but it didn't matter anymore. The damage was complete. In her report, Patricia noted that Ethan was showing increased stress behaviors likely due to housing instability and the custody battle. That notation would come back to haunt me. The second custody hearing arrived 45 days after the first. This time, I knew it would be worse. Eleanor Price, my parents' lawyer, was prepared. She pointed out that I was now homeless, staying on a friend's couch, still unemployed unless you counted gig work that brought in maybe $300 a week. Ethan's behavior had regressed at school. Mrs. Harrison had to admit under oath that his meltdowns had increased and his engagement had decreased. Scott fought back hard. He argued that every problem I faced was directly caused by my family's harassment campaign. The housing loss, the employment loss, all of it tracked back to their actions. He presented evidence of the systematic attack. But Judge Foster's face told me everything I needed to know. She was concerned about Ethan's well-being. In her mind, regardless of whose fault it was, he was suffering. I'm not granting full custody to the petitioners, Judge Foster said, after both sides rested. However, in the best interest of the child, I'm ordering a temporary modification. Ethan will reside with his maternal grandparents Sunday evening through Thursday afternoon. Miss Hartford will have him Friday afternoon through Sunday morning. We'll reconvene in 60 days to reassess. The courtroom spun. I'd lost primary custody. My son would spend 5 days a week with the people who tortured us. Scott was saying something, arguing, but I couldn't hear him over the roaring in my ears. I got Ethan 2 days a week. 2 days out of 7. Outside the courtroom, Amber was waiting. She smiled sweetly. I told you, you never should have crossed us. Maybe now you'll learn your place. I went back to Julia's apartment and locked myself in the bathroom. I sat on the floor and cried until I had nothing left. The next 2 weeks were agony. The custody exchange happened every week. I'd drop Ethan off at my parents' house on Sunday evening and pick him up Friday afternoon. Seeing him walk into that house, looking back at me with confusion in his eyes, broke something inside me every single time. He was regressing even more. The consistency and routine he needed were shattered. He stopped using his communication app as much. His teachers reported more difficulties at school, and I was sleeping on Julia's couch, feeling like the world's biggest failure. On the third Thursday, I went to pick up Ethan for the weekend. My father answered the door, his expression cold. "We've decided we're not giving him back this weekend," he said. My blood turned to ice. What? The judge said we could petition for changes if his best interest requires it. "Ethan is staying here. We're calling our lawyer tomorrow to make it permanent." "You can't do that. There's a court order. Leave, or I'm calling the police for trespassing." I could see Ethan's backpack on the table behind him. I wanted to push past, grab my son, and run. But I was terrified. What if the police came and sided with them? What if this made everything worse? "Let me see him," I pleaded. "Just let me talk to him." "No, leave now, Dolores." He shut the door in my face. I sat in my car and called Scott with shaking hands. He was furious. Said this was a clear violation of the court order, but if I called the police, it could escalate into a scene that might hurt my case more. He'd file an emergency motion first thing in the morning. I drove back to Julia's apartment and didn't sleep that night. My son was in that house, probably wondering where I was, why I hadn't come for him. I'd lost everything, my job, my home, my dignity, and now I was losing Ethan, piece by piece. The emergency hearing took 3 days to schedule. 3 days where I couldn't see my son, couldn't hold him, couldn't tell him I was fighting for him. At the hearing, my parents' lawyer claimed Ethan had a stomach flu and they didn't want to send him to Julia's cramped apartment where he might not get proper care. They said they were planning to call me, but I'd shown up aggressively, and my father felt threatened. All lies, but I couldn't prove it. Judge Foster was annoyed with both sides. She ordered strict compliance with the visitation schedule going forward. I got Ethan back that afternoon, but the damage was done. He was withdrawn, wouldn't look at me. Something had changed in those 3 days. When I was helping him get ready for bed that night, I found medication bottles in his backpack that I'd never seen before. Prescription bottles with Ethan's name on them from a psychiatrist I'd never heard of. Dr. Lance Morrison. Strong anti-anxiety medication. A sedative. Medications that 7-year-olds should never be on. Without extensive evaluation and parental consent. I called Dr. Rao immediately. She was horrified. "This is inappropriate and potentially dangerous. These medications have serious side effects in children. Who prescribed these?" "I don't know. I've never heard of this doctor." "Dolores, you need to document this. This could be the evidence you need." The next morning, I called Dr. Morrison's office. The receptionist confirmed that Diane and Gerald Hartford had brought Ethan in 2 weeks ago. They'd presented the court order showing temporary custody and said I was unreachable. They'd described severe behavioral issues that required immediate medication management. They'd lied. They'd medicated my son without my knowledge or consent, based on fabricated symptoms. I met with Scott that afternoon and showed him everything. His eyes lit up. "This is it," he said. "This proves they're harming him, not helping him. This changes everything. Can we use this?" "Absolutely. We'll file for an emergency modification. But I need you to start documenting everything. Every interaction, every exchange. We're going on a fence now." For the first time in months, I felt something other than despair. I felt anger. Pure, focused rage at what they'd done to my son. Julia introduced me to her cousin Marcus, who worked in IT. He was a quiet man with sharp eyes who listened to my story and immediately wanted to help. "Let me see your phone," he said. "I might be able to recover some deleted messages." Over the next few days, Marcus worked magic. He recovered text messages from Amber that I'd deleted months ago. Threats, manipulations, proof of her campaign against me. He found social media posts where Amber had spread rumors about me in local community groups. Most damning of all, he traced the anonymous phone call to my employer back to Amber's phone number through cell tower records that Julia helped obtain. We had evidence. Real, concrete evidence of their systematic attack. Scott and I started building a case, not just defending anymore, attacking. But Marcus found something else while searching public records. Something explosive. "Dolores, look at this." He turned his laptop toward me. Amber was arrested 3 years ago in Nevada. Assault charge. She attacked a coworker at her previous job. What happened with the case? Looks like it was settled quietly. The record was sealed, but I found the initial police report before it was locked down. My sister had a history of violence, a documented pattern, and my parents had covered it up, probably paid to make it go away. Can we use this in court? I asked Scott. If I can get the record unsealed, absolutely. This proves she's dangerous. It proves your parents have been protecting her violent behavior. This changes everything. I looked at all the evidence spread across Scott's desk. Text messages, phone records, medical records, police reports. For months, I'd been playing defense, barely surviving each attack. Now I had ammunition to fight back. The next hearing was in 30 days, but this time I wouldn't be walking in as a victim. I'd be walking in as a warrior, with the truth as my weapon. My parents had no idea what was coming for them. The next 30 days were a whirlwind of preparation. Scott worked tirelessly to get Amber's assault record unsealed, filing motion after motion. Meanwhile, I documented everything. Every custody exchange, every supervised visit, every time my parents said something cruel or manipulative. But the housing crisis was getting worse. Julia never complained, but I could see the strain. 5 people in her small apartment was unsustainable. Her kids were sleeping in sleeping bags so Ethan could have the couch some nights. It wasn't fair to any of them. I looked at apartments, but without a job and with my credit damaged from late payments on storage fees, nobody would rent to me. I needed first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit. At minimum, that was $3,600 I didn't have. I'd started making decent money from the gig work, but it wasn't enough. I was bringing in maybe $1,100 a month. Julia refused to take rent money from me, but I tried to contribute to groceries and utilities. It still wasn't enough. I applied for emergency housing assistance. The waiting list was 6 months long. The supervised visitations continued, and they got worse. My parents brought more expensive gifts, trying to buy Ethan's affection. They whispered things to him that I couldn't hear, but that made him look at me with confusion. They were trying to turn my own son against me. After one particularly difficult visit, Diane cornered me again. You know this would all go away if you'd just be reasonable. Let Ethan stay with us. You could focus on getting your life together without worrying about him. He's my son, I said quietly. I'm never giving him up. Then you're selfish, she hissed. You're putting your pride before his well-being. Look at yourself. You're homeless, jobless, living on someone's charity. What kind of life is that for a child? I walked away before I said something I'd regret. The job search was still failing. I'd applied to over 100 positions now. A few interviews, but nothing panned out. The gap in employment was too suspicious. And somehow, word kept getting out about the custody battle. I started working more hours with the gig apps, sometimes 12-hour days. Julia watched Ethan when I had him, and I paid her back by cleaning her apartment, cooking meals, doing anything I could to not feel like a complete burden. But I was exhausted, physically, mentally, emotionally drained. One Friday evening, I picked up Ethan from my parents' house for the weekend. He seemed more withdrawn than usual. He wouldn't engage with his communication app at all. He just sat on Julia's couch, staring at nothing. I checked his backpack and found the medication bottles again. They'd kept giving him the pills despite me explicitly telling them to stop. I called Scott immediately. They're still medicating him. What do I do? Stop giving him the medication this weekend. Document that you're stopping it. On Monday, we'll file contempt charges against them for continuing to administer medication without your consent. That weekend with Ethan was hard. He was going through withdrawal from the medications. He was irritable, couldn't sleep, had a headache. But by Sunday morning, I started seeing glimpses of my real son again. He used his communication app to tell me he was hungry. He smiled at one of Julia's daughter's jokes. Getting him off those pills was the right choice, but I knew my parents would use his withdrawal symptoms against me somehow. Sunday evening, I dropped him back at their house. Gerald didn't even look at me, just ushered Ethan inside and slammed the door. The following week, Gerald called me. His voice was different again, softer. Dolores, we need to talk. In person. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near his office. He arrived in his expensive suit, looking every bit the successful businessman he was. "I'm going to be straight with you," he said after we sat down. "Your mother and I have been talking. We're willing to offer you a deal." "What kind of deal?" "We'll drop the custody case entirely. We'll help you get back on your feet. I have connections who can get you a good job, something stable with benefits. We'll pay for your apartment, first few months' rent, get you established. You keep full custody of Ethan." It sounded too good to be true. What's the catch? "You drop all the allegations against Amber. You tell the court it was all a misunderstanding. You stop fighting us and let us be part of Ethan's life as normal grandparents. You want me to lie and say Amber didn't hurt him. I'm asking you to let it go. Move forward. For Ethan's sake." He leaned forward. "Think about it, Dolores. You're running out of options. This is your chance to give your son a stable life." I wanted to believe him so badly. The offer was exactly what I needed, but something felt wrong. "I need to think about it," I said. "You have 24 hours. After that, the offer expires and we proceed with the custody case. And trust me, we will win." I called Scott from the parking lot and told him about the offer. "It's a trap," he said immediately. "If you recant your allegations and tell the court it was a misunderstanding, we lose all our evidence. They'll use your own words to paint you as a liar. And once you're dependent on their money for your apartment and job, they'll have complete control over you. But what if it's legitimate? What if they really just want to end this? Dolores, people who really want to end it don't give 24-hour ultimatums. They don't threaten you with losing custody in the same breath as offering help. This is coercion." Julia said the same thing when I told her. "They're trying to get you to sabotage your own case. Don't fall for it." That night, I lay awake on Julia's couch, staring at the ceiling. 24 hours to decide. Accept help and possibly lose everything, or refuse and face whatever they threw at me next. The next morning, Ethan's teacher, Mrs. Harrison, called me. "Dolores, your parents came to the school again. This time, they brought paperwork claiming they have full custody. They tried to change Ethan's emergency contacts to remove you." My decision crystallized instantly. They weren't offering peace. They were setting up their next attack while dangling a carrot to distract me. I called my father back. "No deal. Tell your lawyer I'll see you in court." His response was cold and immediate. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." 3 days later, I lost the final eviction appeal on my old apartment. My belongings in storage were about to be auctioned off because I couldn't pay the fees. I had $67 in my bank account. And then Marcus called with urgent news. "Dolores, I've been monitoring Amber's social media like you asked. She just posted something you need to see." He sent me a screenshot. Amber had posted in a local real estate group. "Does anyone know a good family lawyer? My sister is about to lose custody of her special needs son, and I want to make sure we have all our ducks in a row for the transfer." She was already celebrating her victory publicly. That night, the final blow came. I went to pick up Ethan for my Friday weekend custody. When I arrived at my parents' house, no one answered the door. I called. No answer. I texted. Nothing. Finally, Diane replied, "Ethan is sick. He can't come this weekend. We'll have him evaluated by his doctor on Monday." "What's wrong with him? I want to talk to him." "He has a fever and is sleeping. We're not disturbing him. You can see him next week." Scott filed another emergency motion, but it was Friday evening. We couldn't get a hearing until Monday at the earliest. I spent the entire weekend terrified and alone. What were they doing to him? Was he really sick, or was this another manipulation? Monday morning, the emergency hearing happened. My parents' lawyer claimed Ethan had a fever of 102 degrees, was vomiting, and it would have been dangerous to send him away from his stable environment. Judge Foster was frustrated with everyone. She ordered strict adherence to the schedule and said any more violations would result in contempt charges. I finally got Ethan back Monday afternoon. He seemed fine. No fever, no illness, but he was even more withdrawn than before. That evening, tucking him into Julia's couch that served as his bed, I noticed bruising on his upper arm. Finger-shaped bruises, like someone had grabbed him hard. I took photos immediately. Then, I gently tried to ask him what happened using his communication app. He just shook his head and turned away from me. Someone had hurt my son, and he was too scared to tell me who. I sent the photos to Scott. His response was immediate. Take him to the pediatrician first thing tomorrow. Get it documented. This is evidence of abuse. The next day, Ethan's pediatrician, Dr. Chen, examined the bruises carefully. These are consistent with someone gripping his arm forcefully, she said. How did this happen? I don't know. He was with his grandparents this weekend. When I got him back, the bruises were there. Dr. Chen made detailed notes and took her own photographs. I'm required to report this, she said gently. I know, please do. Another CPS report was filed, this time against my parents. Patricia came to interview me again. She saw the bruises, reviewed the doctor's report, and said she'd investigate. But I knew how this would go. My parents would claim Ethan hurt himself, or that I did it and was trying to frame them. They'd twist everything. I was at the absolute lowest point of my life, broke, homeless, watching my son suffer, unable to protect him. Every solution I found led to a worse problem. Every move I made got turned against me. That night, I called my parents. My father answered, "You hurt my son," I said quietly. "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied, his voice calm and unconcerned. The bruises on his arm. Someone grabbed him hard enough to leave marks. It was one of you. Ethan is clumsy. He bruises easily. You're seeing abuse where there's just normal childhood accidents. He paused. But if you keep making these false allegations, you're going to lose him permanently. The judge is getting tired of your constant accusations. I have photos. I have medical documentation. And we have a judge who's already skeptical of you. Keep pushing, Dolores. See where it gets you. He hung up. I sat there in Julia's dark living room, my son finally sleeping peacefully on the couch, and realized something important. They thought they'd broken me. They thought I was too weak, too poor, too powerless to fight back anymore. They had no idea what I was about to do. Because while they'd been busy torturing me, Scott and Marcus had been building an arsenal. Evidence, testimony, proof of everything they'd done. The medical records showing inappropriate medication. The police report from Amber's assault charge. The phone records proving her harassment campaign. The bruises on Ethan's arm. The next hearing was in 12 days. And this time, I wasn't walking in as a victim begging for mercy. I was walking in as a mother fighting for her child, armed with the truth and ready for war. My family had spent months trying to destroy me. Now it was my turn. The 12 days before the hearing passed in a blur of preparation and survival, Julia's apartment had become our war room. Scott came over twice with case files and strategy. Marcus kept digging, finding more evidence of Amber's lies. But the daily reality was grinding me down. I was still sleeping on Julia's couch. Still doing gig work that barely paid for gas and food. Still rationing every dollar. And Ethan was suffering. The instability was destroying him. He'd stopped using most of his communication tools. His meltdowns at school had increased to the point where Mrs. Harrison called me 3 times in 1 week. He was regressing in every measurable way. Patricia's investigation into the bruises went exactly as I'd predicted. My parents claimed Ethan had grabbed the stair railing and their father had pulled him back to prevent a fall. Just trying to keep him safe. The bruises were accidental. Patricia couldn't prove otherwise. She closed that investigation too, though she noted in her report that Ethan's stress behaviors had significantly worsened. 1 week before the hearing, I got a job offer. Finally, Julia's company, where she worked in human resources, had an opening in their customer service department. The pay was decent, $38,000 a year with benefits. Julia had recommended me, and her boss was willing to give me a chance despite the employment gap. It was a lifeline. I accepted immediately and started the following Monday. Having a job again felt like breathing after being underwater. It wasn't much, but it was legitimate employment. It was stability. It was something I could present to the judge. But I still needed an apartment. With Julia co-signing and my new job offer as proof of income, I finally found a landlord willing to rent to me. A small 2-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, $1,500 a month. Higher than my old place, but it had to work. The problem was coming up with the money. First month, last month, security deposit, $4,500 total. Julia offered to lend me the full amount. I can't ask you to do that, I said, overwhelmed. You're not asking, I'm giving. You can pay me back when you're stable. She hugged me tight. You're gonna win this, Dolores, and you need a home to bring Ethan to when you do. I signed the lease 3 days before the hearing. We could move in the following week. Things were finally starting to turn around. But my parents weren't done yet. The Thursday before the hearing, during what should have been my last custody exchange before the court date, Gerald opened the door with a strange expression. Come in, Dolores. We need to talk. Every instinct told me not to go inside, but Ethan was in there. I stepped into the foyer. Diane was sitting in the living room. Amber was there too, perched on the arm of the sofa with a smug smile. What's going on? I asked. We wanted to give you one last chance, Gerald said. We're prepared to offer you $30,000 cash. You sign over custody voluntarily, you walk away, and everyone moves on with their lives. I stared at them in disbelief. You're trying to buy my son. We're offering you a fresh start, Diane said. $30,000 is enough to get you set up somewhere. Maybe go back to school, build a real life for yourself. Ethan will be cared for. He'll have everything he needs. Ethan needs his mother, I said. Does he? Amber spoke for the first time. Because from where I'm sitting, his mother is a broke, homeless mess who can't provide basic stability. We're offering you a way out with dignity and money in your pocket. Go to hell, I said quietly. All of you. I tried to move toward the hallway where Ethan's room was, but Gerald blocked my path. Think very carefully about what you're doing, he said. We have one more piece of information you should know. We've secured testimony from 3 of your former co-workers at Sterling Insurance. They're willing to testify that you were difficult to work with, that you had angry outbursts, that you talked about being overwhelmed by Ethan's needs. My stomach dropped. That's not true. Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what they'll say under oath. And we're paying them very well to say exactly what we need them to say. It was another blow. More lies, more manipulation, but I was tired of being afraid. I'll see you in court, I said. Now give me my son. The exchange happened in tense silence. Ethan looked stressed and confused. I got him in the car and drove away, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. That weekend, I focused entirely on Ethan. We stayed at Julia's, but I tried to make it special. We watched his favorite movies. I made his favorite foods. I held him close and told him everything was going to be okay, even though I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. Sunday evening, the phone rang. It was Mrs. Harrison. Dolores, I need to tell you something before the hearing. She sounded upset. Your parents came to the school on Friday. They met with Principal Andrews again. They brought their lawyer. They're trying to get the school to testify about Ethan's behavioral regression. Will Principal Andrews do it? I don't know. He's concerned about Ethan, and the regression is documented. Your parents are framing it as concern for his well-being, not as an attack on you. It's very manipulative. Thank you for warning me. After I hung up, I told Scott about both conversations, the bribe attempt and the school situation. The bribe attempt helps us, he said. It shows consciousness of guilt. People who think they're going to win in court don't offer $30,000 to make someone go away. As for the school testimony, we'll deal with it. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I lay on Julia's couch, listening to Ethan breathe from his makeshift bed nearby, and thought about everything that had led to this moment. 6 months ago, I'd walked into my parents' house for a simple Sunday dinner. Now I was fighting for my son's life in a courtroom, armed with evidence of systematic abuse and harassment. Part of me couldn't believe this was real. These were my parents, my sister, people who were supposed to love me, but they'd shown me exactly who they were, and I had to accept it. The hearing started at 9 o'clock Monday morning. Scott and I arrived early. My parents came with Eleanor Price and another lawyer I didn't recognize. The courtroom was packed with witnesses. This wasn't a simple custody dispute anymore. It was a trial. Judge Foster called the court to order and reviewed the case history. Then she looked at both sides. "I'm hoping we can resolve this today. I've reviewed all the motions and filings. Let's proceed." Eleanor Price started strong. She called my parents' character witnesses, people from their church and social circle who testified what wonderful, stable people they were. She called one of my former coworkers, a woman named Sarah who I'd barely known, who testified that I'd been stressed and short-tempered at work. Then she called Principal Andrews. He testified about Ethan's regression, the increased meltdowns, the decreased engagement. He was careful not to blame me directly, but the implication was clear. Ethan was worse since the custody battle began. But Scott's cross-examination was brilliant. He got Principal Andrews to admit that he'd never observed me interact with Ethan at school. That Mrs. Harrison, who worked with Ethan daily, had a different perspective. That the timeline of Ethan's regression correlated with when he started staying at the grandparents' house. Then it was our turn, and Scott came out swinging. He called Dr. Rao, who testified about my excellent mental health, my coping skills, and my dedication to Ethan's well-being. She explained that the stress I was under wasn't from being unable to handle Ethan, but from being systematically attacked by my own family. He called Mrs. Harrison, who testified about how engaged I was in Ethan's education, how I attended every IEP meeting, how I implemented all the school's recommendations at home. She testified that Ethan's regression coincided exactly with the custody changes, not with anything I did or didn't do. Then Scott entered the medical evidence. The inappropriate medications prescribed without my knowledge or consent. Dr. Morrison's records showing my parents had lied about my availability and exaggerated Ethan's symptoms. Dr. Chen's documentation of the bruises. Eleanor Price objected repeatedly, but Judge Foster allowed the evidence. Scott called Marcus as a technology expert witness. Marcus testified about tracing the harassing phone call to my employer back to Amber's phone, about finding deleted text messages proving Amber's campaign against me, about the pattern of lies and manipulation. Then came the bombshell. Scott entered Amber's sealed assault record. He'd gotten it unsealed through a court order, arguing it was relevant to Ethan's safety. Amber's face went white when the police report was displayed on the courtroom screen. The details of her attacking a coworker, hitting her repeatedly, being restrained by security, the anger management evaluation that recommended therapy, the settlement that made it all go away. "Your Honor," Scott said, "this woman has a documented history of violence. She assaulted Ethan in the very incident that started this case. The family has protected her and covered up her violent behavior repeatedly, and now they want custody of a vulnerable child." Eleanor Price tried to object, tried to argue the assault record was prejudicial, but the damage was done. Scott called me to the stand last. I testified about everything. The Perfume incident, the systematic harassment, the fear I lived with every day, that I'd lose my son, the medication, the bruises, all of it. Eleanor Price's cross-examination was brutal. She hammered me about my employment loss, my housing instability, Ethan's regression, but I held firm. I explained that every problem I faced could be traced directly back to their harassment. "Miss Hartford," Eleanor said, "isn't it true that you were offered help by your parents multiple times and refused it?" "They offered to take my son," I said. "That's not help. That's a demand for surrender. They offered you $30,000 just last week to settle this matter peacefully. They offered to buy my child. I don't know about you, but where I come from, children aren't for sale." I saw Judge Foster's eyebrow raise at that. After testimony concluded, Judge Foster called a recess to review everything. The wait was agonizing. When we reconvened, Judge Foster looked stern. "I've been a family court judge for 23 years, she began. "I've seen a lot of difficult cases. This one stands out because of the systematic nature of the harassment Miss Hartford has endured. My heart pounded. The evidence of inappropriate medication, of a violent assault record that was concealed, of harassment and false reports, is compelling and disturbing. The court finds that the petitioners have not acted in the best interest of the child. In fact, their actions have caused significant harm. She turned to my parents. The temporary custody arrangement is hereby terminated immediately. Full custody is restored to Miss Hartford. The petitioners are ordered to have no contact with the minor child for a minimum of 6 months. After 6 months, if they wish to request supervised visitation, they may do so, but only after completing court-ordered family therapy and parenting classes. I couldn't breathe. Was I hearing this right? Furthermore, Judge Foster continued, I'm referring this matter to the prosecutor's office for investigation of potential criminal charges related to false reports and witness tampering. The petitioners are also ordered to pay Miss Hartford's legal fees in the amount of, she glanced at Scott's filing, $12,300. The gavel came down. I'd won. Completely, totally won. Scott was shaking my hand, congratulating me. I was crying, unable to process it all. Across the courtroom, my parents sat in shock. Amber looked furious. Outside the courthouse, Diane tried to approach me. She was crying now, her makeup running. Dolores, please. We were just trying to help. We thought we were doing what was best. I turned to face her. You drugged my son. You helped your daughter assault him. You systematically tried to destroy my life. There's no coming back from that. But he's our grandson. We love him. No, I said firmly. You don't get to call it love. Love doesn't hurt. Love doesn't manipulate. Love doesn't try to steal someone's child. Stay away from us. I walked to my car, got Ethan from Julia, who'd been watching him during the trial, and drove to our new apartment. Our home, finally. The weeks after the trial felt surreal. I kept expecting something else to go wrong, another attack to come. But for the first time in months, there was peace. Moving into our new apartment was emotional. It was small, but it was ours. Ethan had his own room again. I could establish routines. We had stability. My new job at Julia's company was going well. The work was manageable. My boss was understanding about needing flexibility for Ethan's appointments, and my coworkers were kind. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was actually living. Ethan started improving almost immediately. With the medication out of his system, with stable routines restored, with the stress of the custody battle gone, he began to thrive again. Mrs. Harrison called me 2 weeks after we moved in to say she'd seen remarkable progress. He was engaging more, using his communication app consistently, even attempting some vocalizations he'd never tried before. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, she said. This is the Ethan I remember from before all this started. My relationship with Julia deepened into something even stronger than friendship. She'd stood by me through the worst time of my life. I'd never be able to repay her fully, but I paid her back the money she'd lent me over 6 months, and I babysat her kids every Friday night so she and her husband could have date nights. The civil judgment against my parents was enforced. They paid Scott's fees. I used that money to pay off debts, build up my savings, and buy new furniture for the apartment. Amber faced consequences too. The prosecutor did investigate, and while criminal charges weren't filed, she was placed on probation for filing false reports. She also lost her real estate license temporarily. Last I heard, she'd moved to another state. I didn't care where as long as it was far from us. But my parents didn't give up entirely. 6 months after the trial, their lawyer contacted Scott. They'd completed the court-ordered therapy and parenting classes. They wanted supervised visitation with Ethan. Scott brought me the request. You have the power to say yes or no. The judge gave you that authority. What do you want to do? I thought about it for a long time. I talked to Dr. Rao about it in therapy. She asked me what my goals were. I want Ethan to have a family, I said. I want him to know his grandparents if they can actually be good grandparents. But I will never, ever let them hurt him again. That's a reasonable position, Dr. Rao said. You can allow limited, supervised contact while maintaining strong boundaries. If they violate those boundaries, you can stop contact immediately. After much deliberation, I agreed to one supervised visit. One chance for them to prove they'd changed. The visit was arranged at a family visitation center with a social worker present. I brought Ethan, who was nervous but curious. He barely remembered them at this point, which broke my heart and relieved me in equal measure. My parents arrived looking older, more tired. My father's hair had gone completely gray. My mother's face was lined with stress. When they saw Ethan, both of them started crying. "Hi, sweetheart," Diane said softly, kneeling down to his level but not touching him without permission. "Do you remember us?" Ethan looked at me. I nodded that it was okay. He looked back at her and shook his head. "No." "That's okay," she said, her voice breaking. "We'd like to get to know you again, if that's all right." The visit lasted 1 hour. They brought age-appropriate toys. They asked Ethan about school, about what he liked. They didn't try to hug him or force affection. They respected his space, and most importantly, they apologized to me. "Dolores," my father said quietly, while Ethan was playing with blocks across the room. "I need to say this. We were wrong. About everything. The things we did, the things we said. There's no excuse. We got so caught up in trying to control the situation that we lost sight of what actually mattered," Diane added. "We hurt you. We hurt Ethan. And we're so sorry." I looked at them carefully, trying to see if it was genuine. "Why did you do it? Why did it have to get that bad?" Gerald was quiet for a long moment. "Pride, I think. And fear. You were raising Ethan differently than how we raised you. You were standing up to us, making your own choices. Amber has always been difficult, and we've always covered for her. When she hurt Ethan and you confronted us, it felt like you were attacking the family." "So you attacked back?" I said. "Yes, and we were completely wrong to do it. You're an excellent mother. Ethan is thriving because of you, not despite you. We see that now." I didn't forgive them. Not yet, maybe not ever, but I saw remorse that seemed real. "If you want to be part of his life, there are rules," I said. "Strict boundaries. You follow them or you're gone. Understand?" They both nodded. Over the next months, they had supervised visits every 2 weeks. They never pushed for more. They respected the boundaries I set. Slowly, very slowly, I allowed them slightly more access. From supervised visits to phone calls. From phone calls to video chats where Ethan could see them, but I was always present. By the 1-year anniversary of the trial, they were allowed to visit our apartment for 1 hour every other Sunday afternoon, with me always present. It wasn't a normal grandparent relationship. It probably never would be, but it was something. And it was on my terms. Amber never tried to contact us. I heard through Julia's cousin Marcus, who kept tabs on her online, that she'd moved to Arizona and was working in hotel management. Good. The farther away, the better. My life slowly rebuilt. I got promoted at work. Ethan continued to make progress in therapy. I even started dating someone. A teacher at Ethan's school named David, who thought my son was amazing. But the best moment came one evening, about 18 months after the trial. Ethan and I were sitting on our couch reading a book together before bed. He was snuggled against my side, completely comfortable and happy. He looked up at me and, using his communication app, typed out a message. Then he showed me the screen. "Home, safe, love mama." I started crying right there, pulling him close. "I love you too, baby. So much." Everything we'd been through, every horrible moment, every terrifying day, had been worth it to get to this moment. This peace, this safety, this love. We were home. Looking back now, almost 2 years since that Sunday dinner that changed everything, I can see the journey clearly. The woman I was before, the woman who showed up at her parents' house expecting a normal family meal, feels like a different person. That woman still believed her family loved her unconditionally. She still hoped that standing up for her son would make things better. She still trusted that the truth would be enough. I'm not that woman anymore. I'm stronger now. Scarred, yes. Changed, definitely. But stronger. The life I've built since the trial is mine. Not borrowed, not dependent on anyone else's approval or support. Mine and Ethan's together. My job turned into a career. I was promoted twice and now manage a small team in customer service. The stability allows me to provide everything Ethan needs without stress or worry. Ethan himself is doing remarkably well. He's 9 now, still nonverbal but communicating clearly through his app and sign language. His teachers say he's one of the most joyful kids in his class. He has friends, he's learning, he's happy. That's what matters most. His happiness, his safety, his ability to be exactly who he is without someone trying to change him or mock him or hurt him. The relationship with my parents remains limited but stable. They see Ethan once a month now, always at my apartment, always with me present. They bring small gifts. They ask about school. They respect his space. They're trying to be better, and I acknowledge that effort while maintaining my boundaries. My father told me a few months ago that the whole experience forced him into therapy for the first time in his life. He said his therapist helped him understand how his need for control and his enabling of Amber had destroyed his relationship with me. He cried when he said it, which I'd never seen him do before. My mother struggles more with accepting what happened. She still occasionally tries to justify their actions or minimize the harm. When she does, I remind her firmly that we're only here because I allow it, and she can lose this privilege instantly. She usually apologizes. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive them. Some betrayals cut too deep. Some scars don't fade. But I've learned that forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation, and reconciliation isn't the same as trust. They're allowed in Ethan's life in a very controlled, limited way. That might be all we ever have, and I'm okay with that. Julia remains my closest friend, my sister in every way that matters. Her family and mine have Sunday dinners together twice a month. Her kids adore Ethan, and he adores them. We've talked about going on a vacation together next summer, maybe to Disney World. Ethan has been using his app to tell us he wants to meet Mickey Mouse. David, the teacher I started dating, proposed last month. I said yes, but we're taking our time with the wedding. Ethan needs to feel comfortable with the changes, and I'm not rushing anything anymore. David understands. He loves Ethan like his own, and that patience and acceptance are exactly why I'm marrying him. I've also started volunteering with the nonprofit organization that connected me with Scott. I help other single parents navigate custody battles and family conflicts. I can't be a lawyer for them, but I can be a voice of hope. I can tell them that even when it feels impossible, even when you're at rock bottom, you can fight back and win. Because that's the lesson I learned through all of this. You're stronger than you think you are. When everything is stripped away, when you're broke and homeless and terrified, you still have your love for your child. And that love is the most powerful force in the world. No amount of money, no legal tricks, no family manipulation can defeat a mother's love when she decides to fight. I also learned about boundaries. That saying no to family isn't cruel, it's necessary. That protecting your child from harmful people is your job, even when those people share your DNA. That you don't owe anyone access to your life just because they're related to you. The trauma left marks. I still have nightmares sometimes about losing Ethan, about showing up to court and having the judge take him away. I still feel panic when my phone rings and it's an unknown number. I still check over my shoulder in parking lots, still worry that Amber might show up somewhere. But I'm working through it in therapy. Dr. Rao has been instrumental in helping me process everything. She reminds me that healing isn't linear, that having bad days doesn't mean I'm failing. Some weeks are harder than others, but overall, I'm moving forward. The apartment we moved into 2 years ago, we just signed the lease renewal. It's become our sanctuary, filled with Ethan's artwork and photos and the life we've built together. His room is painted his favorite color, blue. He has a shelf full of books and sensory toys. He has routines and stability and safety. Every night, I tuck him in and tell him he's loved. Every morning, I wake up grateful that he's mine, that we made it through, that we're here together. Last week, Ethan's teacher sent home a drawing he made in art class. It was our family, him, me, David, and Julia's family, all of us together, holding hands. At the top, he'd typed on his communication app and had the teacher write, "My people, I love them." I cried when I saw it. Then I framed it and hung it in our living room. Because that's what we are, his people. The ones who stood by him, who fought for him, who loved him unconditionally. Not the people who shared his DNA, but the people who showed up when it mattered. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who choose to stand beside you in the darkness and help you find the light. If you're listening to this and going through something similar, if you're facing betrayal from your own family, if you're fighting for your child against impossible odds, please hear me. You can survive this. You can win. It won't be easy. It might break you down to nothing before you rebuild. But you have more strength inside you than you know. Document everything. Find good people to support you. Don't be afraid to accept help. And never, ever give up on protecting your child. The system isn't perfect. The legal process is grueling. The emotional toll is devastating. But truth and love do win in the end. Not always quickly, not always easily, but they win. 2 years ago, my sister sprayed perfume in my son's eyes and my parents laughed. They thought they could destroy me, take my child, and face no consequences. They were wrong. I'm here. Ethan is here. We're safe, we're happy, and we're home. And that's the best revenge of all. Not destroying them, but building a beautiful life they have no power over. To everyone listening, thank you for hearing my story. I hope it gives you hope if you're struggling. I hope it reminds you that you're not alone. And I hope it shows you that no matter how dark things get, there's always a way forward. What would you have done in my situation? When family turns against you, when the people who should protect you become your biggest threat, how do you find the strength to fight back? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of survival and triumph. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they're not alone in their struggles. Thank you for listening, for supporting, and for being part of this community. I wish you and your families safety, love, and the courage to protect what matters most. Remember, you're stronger than you think. Your love is more powerful than their hate, and you deserve a life of peace and happiness, no matter what anyone else says. Take care of yourselves and each other.